Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jodi Sandfort, and I have the great privilege of being the Dean of the Evans School of Public Policy and Governance. Today, to celebrate our graduates, we're going to hear from Superintendent Brent Jones as our commencement speaker and from student speakers. But I want to start by offering a few remarks given where we find ourselves as a society. These days, I think we're all seeing very clearly the importance of public policy and governance. From the promotion of vaccines, to the access to national parks, to the accuracy of weather data on our phones, we know that public policy matters. We also are seeing in the importance of governance in how we organize ourselves, in the tensions that we're seeing playing out between the executive office of the president, Congress, courts, and the states. For years, researchers have documented the decreased trust in government and social and civic trust. And now we're seeing what has resulted in the decline. In the last year, I've been thinking about this a lot as the metaphor of our fragile democratic house. In our field of public policy and management, we've been working on this problem for a long time. We're focused on being clear-eyed about describing what has been, what is, as well as thinking about what can be. For example, in the curriculum here, you've learned about evidence-based policymaking and the facts that there is a long and persistent history in this country of racial division and hatred, of ignoring inequities caused by the market, of fueling environmental degradation. Yet you've also learned that in this House, there is an equally persistent effort to renovate and innovate in democracy, to draw upon evidence, to lead, to advance our country's abilities to be just, to be fair, to advance equality. You've learned about public values and come to see that there are tensions between efficiency and effectiveness, tolerance, equity, and fairness. And how we resolve these tensions are fundamental to the democratic process. As some of you know, I was a history major in college, and I found inspiration in the words of Heather Cox Richardson, who's a historian who writes a daily blog. And this is an interesting thing to me because she is a history professor, and she's writing so that a graduate student in 100 years will be able to make sense of these times. So last week, she turned to the 1950s and the political dynamics in this country around the accusations of rampant communism that was being made by Senator Joe McCartney. She quoted a Republican senator at that time, Margaret Chase, who was reflecting on the national conditions 75 years ago, who said, quote, "It's a national feeling of fear and frustration that could result in national suicide and the end of everything that we Americans hold dear." She continued, "Those of us who shout loudest about Americanism are all too frequently those who, by our own words and acts, ignore some of the basic principles of Americanism." Although Senator Smith desperately wanted to replace the Democratic president at the time, Harry Truman, she was also clear, quote, "As an American, I condemn a Republican fascist just as much as I condemn a Democratic communist. They are equally dangerous to you and to me and to our country. As an American, I want to see our nation recapture the strength and unity it once had when we fought the enemy instead of ourselves." A month ago, another Maine senator, Angus King, who's an independent, was reflecting on these words. He said, "I fear that we are at a similar moment in history." Echoing Senator Smith, today's crisis should not be framed as a partisan issue. This is not about Democrats or Republicans or immigration or tax policy or even the next set of elections. Today's crisis threatens the idea of America and the system of government that has sustained us for more than 2 centuries. So using my analogy of a democratic house, We are at a moment in history when the office of the president seems focused on demolishing it. In the last 4.5 months, the president has issued 156 executive orders in an effort to make the American people believe that that office has more authority than it does. Our Constitution clearly establishes the separation of power, the national level between the president, the Congress, and the Supreme Court. And there's important authority that we're seeing play out right now in California between the state and local governments, where many of you are likely going to start your careers. So this house of ours, it's designed for resiliency. However, the design depends on everyday people coming together in different places to address together things we can't do alone. We all need to lean in and focus on creating the plans and implementing the programs for significant renovation in this democracy. I actually think we need to go down to the studs to see where there is structural integrity and where there are fundamental faults. To me, it's about all the things we can do to create civic trust. What happens if we turn to each other and realize there's a better place to work on these issues with each other? And this change of mindset gets real specific real fast. As people with the training that you all have received, how might we build secure and integrated data sets to improve public services rather than enable surveillance? How might we give people an experience of getting their needs met without red tape or demoralizing processes? How might we all disagree better and see that disagreement and the compromises that are required as fundamental to what makes our democratic house stronger? You all are graduating with professional expertise, and yet I hope you have learned here that it's important to take that professional expertise and use it in service as citizen professionals who keep your own identity and experiences central to your calling as a profession. At Evans and at the UW, we're doing this work ourselves, and we're looking at the structure of the Democratic House and trying to shore it up. Because cultivating civic health is as much about how we do things as what we do. In any renovation, it's really important to pay attention to things of beauty and try to make them better. Those of you who did a lot of coursework in Parrington Hall, think of those skylights up in those classrooms. Before the renovation, they're about 125 years old. They used to leak a lot. And rather than eliminating those, the faculty and staff decided to deal with the problem, preserve the beauty, and so in our big classrooms, we were able to have that natural light that every time I walk into those rooms makes me feel bigger and better, part of something large. So when I look at the world right now, when we think about the renovation projects, the highest stakes is in the battle of the hearts and minds of you as young people. There's so many things that are encouraging you to feel small, to believe you can't make a difference, that the whole system is rigged. And yet when I talk to you, I see something so different. You have joined this amazing faculty in facilitating discussions in Olympia, in doing capstones that have made a difference. You volunteered at food shelves. You've worked hard to understand complex economic and institutional concepts and learn how to summarize complex things in memos and in engaging presentations. And you've done this work in a public institution of higher education. Like many public institutions right now, we're being attacked by the same forces that are trying to consolidate political power. But I think it is because when we bring people together like you and set the conditions for learning, inquiry, and engagement, power is created. So I think we all need to start simple and think about what can we each do to build civic trust. Everybody decides every day, when do you show up? What do you do? How can you serve your community? And laying in, even when we disagree, we have to listen to each other, find out what we have in common, and do so respectfully. The work ahead of all of us are significant. We need to invest in the people who are working in the public square, acknowledging what has worked and what has not worked. We need to retrofit this house by investing in, like you have, in the intellect. We need to make things work for all people. And we need to start practicing doing more things together. Tolerance of difference, it is what has always allowed us to thrive as a country. So, although it's far from perfect, our multiracial, multi-ethnic democracy has been a beacon to the world. There's a long, nonpartisan, historical tradition of people committed to making this democratic house stronger. So I will just conclude by saying, my best friend gave me a quote last week that I wanted to share from a colleagues of hers at UNC. She said, "If you're wringing your hands, you can't roll up your sleeves at this moment." So I hope you leave this celebration realizing that all of us associated with the Evans School have our sleeves rolled up. To create the democracy we need, rather than what we've had, we need to work on this renovation together.